Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. My name is Alyssa, also known as the President of Earth. Actually, this is a tribute to Stacey Abrams, who we all know is the real President of Earth, as we saw. I mean, come on. Anyways, I'm joined here by my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity. Say hello, Mark.
Hey, how's it going? So I'm here and I just want to blow shit up so I can go home to my other universe to find my best friend. Because that's a very realistic and strong motivation for me to have.
Yes, and we will be talking about that in a bit. Before we get started, I want to say hello. It's all my usual suspects in the chat, the guys that always join me whenever I do a live chat, and I really, really appreciate it. We got Brandon Howells, we got Maddie Jester, we got Norman Buckwald, and I think that's it for now. I didn't see anyone else yet. So thank you guys for joining as usual. Good to see you all. So this is how it's gonna go. I have a very, very firm deadline that I must be done by 7:30 at the latest, and if we're done earlier than that, I would be okay too. And we're a little late getting started, so we're looking at probably an hour and 20 minutes. Sometimes these discussions go 2 hours, so I have to cut it off at 7:30 local time, which is about an hour and 21 minutes from now. We're gonna go through our overall thoughts. Then there's 4 topics I definitely want to get to, and then if there's time, we'll do a little bit more. And we want to go by storylines this time. So we're going to talk about the DMA. Then we're going to talk about Tarka's storyline. That's when Mark can rant about Tarka. We can talk about the debate between him and Buck and Burnham and Relic over what to do about the DMA. And we'll talk about Book and Burnham, and then also we'll talk about Species 10C and all that stuff. And if there's time, we'll get into a little bit more. All right. Why don't we start with our overall thoughts? I'll start with you, Mark. What did you think overall of season 4 of Discovery?
Yeah, I said before that I felt like season 4 was the best season of Discovery so far, but keeping in mind, I don't think that's a really high bar. Personally, because I think it's the best because it was I would say it's the one with the least pacing issues, although it did have pacing issues. But it was the mystery worked, like they established this mystery and they slowly disseminated it, and then the payoff was really satisfying and strong. Now, it should have been the shorter season. That's something I'm sure you'll say. That's something everyone said. I think is evident, obvious to everyone. Although I will give a shout out to Patreon supporter. I believe he's in the chat. Yeah, Norman Buckwald, who once told me that he felt that this whole season storyline could have been a 3-parter, and that the season should have been more like Enterprise season 4 with a bunch of different 3-parters and 2-parters, which I personally disagree. I think there's more meat on the bones on this storyline than just a 3-parter. I would have said 7 or 8 parts, 7 or 8 episodes. Like, I think this season should have been like Heroes season 2, where or season 3, where there's like 2 or at least span season 3, you could even say, where there's one storyline and it's half the season. We have a mid-season break. We come back and we do a totally different storyline for another 6 episodes. Like, I think, to me, or just have an 8-episode season. Like, either of those doesn't work because there's a lot of unnecessary and filler stuff in this season that we didn't work. But, and I still think Discovery has a problem with over sentimentality. But when compared to previous seasons, I have less to complain about in this season that I did in previous seasons. So that's why I think it's the strongest.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the strongest. And well, I'll just comment on some of the things you just said. I think there's no way in hell it could be 3 episodes. I said 10. Like, I think 10 would be a good amount of episodes. I think you cut out episodes 8, 10, and whatever the one with Burnham's mom was. That was totally irrelevant. And those are your 3 you cut out, and then you have 10. I think that would have been a good solid amount of episodes. I think you don't tell a good story if it's in 3. Like there's no way you can do it in 3. And I also don't like the Heroes format, and maybe just because Heroes season 3 really sucked, but I also don't like. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 where they did the opposite. Like their goal was the opposite of the first half of the season. This was the second half. Like they were trying to give everybody powers in one half of it, and they were trying to take away everyone's powers in the other half.
I don't even remember that.
I think it was that dude Nathan was involved in trying to do both of them. It was terrible. So maybe I'm just I don't like that format because of that, but I wouldn't want that format. If I want Discovery to do one storyline through the whole season. That's what I want. And I thought 10 episodes, which is what normal shows are. I think 10 episodes would have been good. Go ahead.
I don't know. Well, I was just going to say, I think for me, in my opinion, I think it would still be a bit fatty. Maybe nowhere near as bad. It would be more acceptable. But to me, like an 8 seems like a perfect number.
Like, what else would you cut out, though? Like, I think everything else was pretty important.
Well, I mean, I think some of the episodes could have been combined and told a bit faster and more concise. Yeah. Like, the straight out episodes to cut is the 3 you named are perfect. But the rest of the story, I would maybe just trim it down a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to point out Matty Jester is in the chat because I was going to mention this because he also said this same thing on one of my videos. He made a comment, and I was going to point this out. The season 5 is apparently 10 episodes. And I think that's good. I think they finally learned a lesson because none of the seasons of Discovery should have been more than 10 episodes. No. They all were. So,
but it's not as bad as that show 24 because I always used to say that would have been a way better show if it was called 12 because it was always way too long.
Yeah, if it was called 12 and it was 3 seasons long. But anyways, I kind of got sidetracked into that whole thing. I haven't really given all my overall thoughts of the season. And I did think it was the best season. I've always think of Discovery. I've always had a slightly higher opinion of it than Marc does. So I still have a higher opinion of it. But I still don't think that it's had its truly great season yet. And who knows if it ever will. I don't know if it will. I would love if it had one truly great season before it was all said and done. Enterprise had one, season 3. So if Enterprise could have one, and Enterprise was terrible the first 2 seasons, then Discovery can do one. But they haven't yet. But this is definitely the best of them. My biggest beef is that it was too many episodes. For me specifically, 8, 10, and whichever one with the Quat Malat or whatever, those 3, take them out. And
wait, so 8 was the casino one and 10 was the barrier one, right?
The barrier one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Now curse like Avasarala, Brandon says, because I'm the president of Earth. No, not. She's the Secretary General. No.
Of the UN.
Yeah. No, I'm Stacey Abrams, is what I'm trying to say here. But really, this is just a tribute to the true president of Earth, as everyone knows, is Stacey Abrams. Anyways, Matty Jester says I have a mate who loves Enterprise seasons 1 and 2, and I think he's mad. Yeah,
you're correct, Matty. He is mad.
Yeah. Ben Normans points out whoever thought in the world of Trek 13 episodes would be too long. We've come a long way. No Ferengi episodes for filler. Well, in the new world of Trek, we're doing serialized stuff, which they were much more episodic at the time. Like I don't know how many episodes Strange New Worlds is supposed to have, but I think it could do 12 or 13 if it's going to be episodic. But a serialized storyline like Discovery's been doing. They keep coming up with stories that can be told in fewer episodes, so they drag it out over 13. Anyways, so yeah, season 4, best season of Discovery so far. And I have to point out, as I do annually, that I never had the problem with this over sentimentality thing that you have. I agree with it when it comes to like the bridge characters, the background characters, when they and the whole Arium thing in season 2 when they try to make us believe that there's some kind of sentimentality between those characters, but that I don't buy. But when it comes to the main characters, Burnham and Book, Burnham and Tilly, Burnham and Saru, I buy all of that, and I don't think it. To me, it's not over sentimentality, but that's just my point of view, and that's something I think we just continue to disagree on.
Well,
It's not a problem for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have more of an issue with the over sentimentality with the minor characters. So I do agree with you. I maybe have sometimes like the main character stuff will bother me a little bit. Like sometimes they dwell too much on it. So maybe that's where we just disagree. For the most part, I think we're kind of on page with that.
Yeah, and Norman points out in the chat childhood memories and trauma narrations at awkward.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was weird. That was just. Fortunately, they kind of didn't do that toward the end of the season.
Like, I will say that the whole Stamets and Colbert and the Deer family, I never thought that was over sentimentality. I also always really liked that stuff.
Yeah, I really like that stuff too. Okay, well, let's start with the first storyline. We're going to kind of start with it. We're going to go through the season a little bit. Let's start at the beginning of the season, which honestly I have to stretch my memory to remember because it was so long ago now because they had that stupid break in the middle. So the DMA shows up. It's a strange anomaly. So I think you and I and pretty much everyone else that I heard reviews of, I think it was pretty generally thought that, okay, this is interesting, but how are they going to fuck this up because of previous reasons? So, I don't know, Mark. I don't know if you remember because it was so long ago, but talk me through like your kind of sense as you were watching this. Were you intrigued? Were you hooked? Did you think it was a chance it was going to be good, or were you just like expecting it to be another burn, or what?
Well, I think I was a bit more skeptical because I think it's very clear that I like season 3 less than you did. So I came into the season not really having my hopes high, expecting much. And I remember, and looking back on it, I'm still kind of mixed on it because I love the payoff more of all because you're right. We're kind of thinking how they're going to fuck this up, but they didn't, and that's what's surprising. And in fact, all the things you're like, oh, they're going to make it like some cheesy mustache twirly villain was behind sending this DMA to kill everyone, and it turned out not to be the case, which is great. And so I think at the start of the season, that's my biggest fears. So looking back on that, I say that my fears weren't justified. I think the Hulk was pretty good. I think maybe I did complain kind of a bit when Quazon got destroyed that they expected us to feel more connection to it than I did, but then the follow-up episodes that went through books Guilt, I think were amazing and actually justified that in retrospect. And as far as like the DMA itself, at first I was like, oh yeah, an anomaly that's destructive in Star Trek. We've never seen that before. But I think they did something interesting with it and different where it felt different enough where it wasn't the same thing. Although I will say that the writers kept telling me that this was an analogy for like COVID crisis and stuff, and if the writers never told me that, I would never guess that in a billion years. But once they mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, I can kind of see that. But I would, it's really faint, which I think is good because I think it's actually good to have allegories that don't paste you over the head sometimes. So yeah, I actually, looking back on it, I actually feel more positive about it than I did at the time.
Yeah, I was cautiously optimistic about it because even though I did still like season 3 better than you did, the burn was definitely, a disappointment. And they just haven't really done a great job. And I said in season 2 that if Michael Burnham was the Red Angel, I would quit the show. And then I kind of backtracked on that. So I wasn't happy with the resolution of season 2 either. And so I was like, oh God, I was kind of honestly hoping, and I still hope this for season 5, that we could do a serialized show. There doesn't have to be a mystery box.
Yes.
It can still be serialized without a mystery box. You can still have smaller mysteries like, oh, here's a new character. What is their motivation? What's their backstory? Those sorts of things, but not where the entire season, whether it's good or not, totally depends on the payoff of this mystery box. Like, it made me nervous. And as it turned out, it turned out very well. And it definitely was the best one that they've done. But I was definitely cautiously optimistic about it. But I was hooked, and I had a different reaction to the Quajon thing initially than you did. I thought that it was necessary to show us the stakes of this anomaly, because if it had destroyed some random planet that, you know, some character we just met that week or something, and their planet, that doesn't have the same impact on us as viewers as having a planet destroyed from one of our main characters. And you're not going to do Earth, at least not this early on. I actually thought Earth being destroyed wasn't completely off the table because it's the 32nd century, but not this early on in the season. That would have been, I think that would have been felt like too much of a, we're trying to shock you. Ooh, Earth's destroyed. Like, but I do like that they destroyed Book Planet, not for the character's sake, but for storytelling. I thought that it really raised the stakes for the DMA very early on. And also, I absolutely agree with you that the way they showed his grief was fantastic.
Yeah. No, I actually agree with that. That if they had just chosen some random planet, that it wouldn't be as high stakes as it was. So yeah, I do think yeah. And also, I guess we could talk about it now, because I think it was this section of the season where they had that prison planet. Like, that was a very effective emotional planet where they were trying to break these prisoners out, and one of them decided to stay behind, pay for his crimes. Like, that is a good Star Trek. Like, that's like the good, powerful Star Trek type episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and it also raised the stakes for the DMA again, because it shows more examples of how destructive this thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And this is the episode, the first one where we got one of those random, like, the bridge crew making a random blood, because like Reese, I always used to get Bryce and Reese confused, but I think it's I got him. Reese. I got him. Yeah. It's Reese, and he was in the middle of this evacuation. Like, he was in charge of evacuating all of the people while Burnham and was it Book who went with her? Yeah, Burnham and Book went to prison. He was like, he ain't gonna get moving, and he stops to go, when I was a little kid, I was like, get going, you're supposed to be evacuating.
I think when I did my review for that episode, I started out by saying, you know, when I was a kid, I just wanted some random shit.
I think you did that for the next episode after Owo did it too.
Oh, right, yeah.
2 weeks in a row they had characters doing it. I think it was after the second one you did that. But anyways, that's a side joke. That was a really good Star Trek episode. And again, this is why I don't think you have less than 10, because you need episodes like this. You need good Star Trek episodes.
Well, while we were talking, I did think of another episode that I would cut, and I think we disagree on that. Is the one with Tilly and the cadets getting trapped on the planet. I would X that.
Well, we gotta have Tilly go to the Starfleet, but go to the Starfleet Academy.
Yeah, but do we need a whole episode? I'm just so sick of shuttlecraft crashes.
Yeah. On a bit of a side note, I don't want to get too much on side topics, but I heard that there's a Starfleet Academy show in production, which I had heard about, or I don't know if it's in production, but it's on the list. And originally I had heard about it years back, and I said I didn't want it, but it's going to be apparently set in the 32nd century and have Tilly in it.
It is? That's been confirmed?
No, it hasn't been confirmed, I don't think.
Okay, because that thought occurred to me after the end of the season, because, like, Tilly, it's like, how are they going to keep Tilly on the show? I was like, wait a second, maybe they're setting up for the Starfleet Academy show.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I don't think I'd like this show. We'll see.
I think they should have if they had different characters in it than the ones that they've had. I think.
Yeah, I didn't like those cadets, really.
Yeah, I don't think those characters would hold a series. I think if you had different, I would actually rather that than it. I thought it was going to be just set in like the next generation times, and I was like, I'd rather another show in the 32nd century. But
Yeah,
anyways,
that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want a cadet show, but okay.
Yeah, yeah. True. It could be like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Anyways, there was something in the chat I wanted to. Oh, I was going to mention about because I didn't mention the thing that you said, Mark, about the COVID analogy. Norman Buckwell, the DMA for analogy for COVID. What? Yeah, and I agree. And I kind of just like when the writer said that, I just sort of whatever. Like I wasn't taking that into any consideration when I did my reviews or when I thought about, because I didn't see it at all. So if they told me that, I'm like, okay, if you say so. Like I didn't really put a whole lot of stock into it.
Yeah, and they kept saying that though. They kept repeating it and saying that the miscommunication is about how we can't communicate to each other in this day and age. I'm like, you're reaching, but okay. I mean, if that's what you're going for, fine.
Yeah. No, I definitely didn't get.
Because I think doing that's better than there's a pandemic. Like if they were like too on the nose, then that would be a bit more annoying to
me. Yeah.
Especially since Star Trek has done these deadly virus episodes too much already.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, let's get us back on the track. Talking about the DMA at the beginning of the season. So yeah, I think we're both sort of on the same page that we thought it was a good payoff, although we didn't think that there necessarily would be. In the beginning.
Yes. So that's a good compliment to the season.
Yeah, and I do think, I don't remember any specific episodes, but I actually do remember thinking there were. Oh, I think one of them was the one that I think should have been cut, where they just barely touched on the DMA, and I was like, if we're gonna have this, let's at least, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. The whole Burnham's mom. I never liked the Burnham's mom character, to be honest. Like, so I really could have done without that. It's like it seems like they were trying to promote Picard with that episode. Hey, the Quatmalat.
Yeah, but the Quatmalat aren't even in season 2, so this isn't even. And they were trying to get you to go back and watch season 1.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know. Don't even get me started on Eleanor's death, but that's a whole different thing. I was talking in the chat with people about Picard before you got it. So let's go ahead and talk about so we get this new antagonist introduced, Tarka. What is his first name? I can't even remember his first name.
Oh god, yeah, I can't rember. I used to call him
Marc
for like 3 or 4 episodes. I was calling him Aaron. It took a while before I started calling him Tarka.
Yeah. But and I noticed that there was some chatter a little bit earlier on in the chat about Tarka. So he's introduced. I thought it was a very interesting character at first. But I didn't necessarily know he was the season antagonist when we first met him. But it was very, by the time we get to episode 7, it was very obvious that that's what they were setting him up to be. But I thought I don't know. I know you're going to have some things to say about his backstory. I didn't have a terrible problem with his backstory because as a motivation for him, because sure, why not? Like, I mean, I just think overall he was better than Osiris, which I believe somebody said in the chat, like by a million times. Yeah. He wasn't a mustache twirly villain. He had his actual motivation. Now, was it the best thing in the world? No, but my complaint more is with that episode 10, which I've already said should have been cut. They shouldn't have had. They didn't need a whole episode. Oh, we're trying to get through the barrier. Like, just go through the barrier. And then,
exactly.
And then I was thinking about this today. That flashback with Tarka and his friend or whatever, um, the way that it was structured, it really reminded me of a Lost flashback, and it made me think like Lost usually is building towards something, or their good flashbacks are not all of them have a
Yeah.
payoff, but in the end, there is either some big revelation or some big insight of the character that you didn't know, and the flashbacks are all building up to that. Some of them sucked, but some of them were the good Lost flashbacks. Like really had a good payoff at the end, and I feel like they were trying. That's how they were presenting itself. But then at the end, it was just like, yeah, I could have told you he portrayed him. I mean, he's an asshole. I would probably would have. There was a little bit of revelation there. I definitely don't feel like we needed a full episode of that. I do think we did need to see a little bit more of his backstory than what he gives when we first meet him, but I don't think we needed a whole episode on it. And I can take or leave his back. I don't have a huge problem with his backstory, but I do think that we didn't need a whole episode on it. And overall, I come away pleased with the fact that we have a better antagonist than we had last season, but I think they can do better next year as well. I think you can improve upon this even.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree that Tarka is way better than not just Osiris, but any of the previous, villains. Like even Lorca being from the Mirror Universe was a massive disappointment to me. Like he was a complex character, but no, he's a mustache twirly villain. And Control, I was never a fan of either. And was that the Wayland person or whatever he was? But anyway, so yeah, I think this is part of why this is the best season of Discovery, because it didn't fall back to the evil villain trope, and instead presented a complex character who's not necessarily like in the wrong or whatever. Well, he was towards the end, which kind of, but he had his own sort of motivations, and I guess that's when I get to my complaints about it. And they got an amazing actor to play him too, which is not hard. But I guess my complaints about him is that I wish that he was even less of a villain. Like that's why I kind of have an issue with this backstory, because when I first presented this character, I thought, well, his motivation is the same as Bulk's, to try to save lives, and I think if they kept it that way, it would have made more sense. It would have made me like the character better. But then when later on he does like these ridiculous things because he's obsessed with getting back to the universe, and so that's why they were adding that in. And I start to wonder if maybe they just 86 that whole storyline and not made him so evil, crazy, and have magical abilities to defeat Book easily or whatever. Like that, maybe he would have been a better character. But if they must have this backstory, I think they could have done a lot better job disseminating it. Like I think we were just told, like kind of like the way these side characters, like a sponge from my childhood. It seemed like out of place and jarring and bad dialogue. It was, oh well, I have this friend in the universe. And I'm like, what? And so it seems like if they wanted to go this way, maybe I would have liked it better or followed it better if they started with a more believable explaining it and had the flashbacks towards the beginning, not after the fact, to explain his backstory. I think that kind of came too little too late. And the flashbacks itself reminded me of all these, people stuck in a cell bonding cliche, and I don't think it was done particularly well. Like I was thinking that Deep Space Nine episode Hard Time, it seemed like a lesser version of that to me.
Yeah.
So yes, much better character. I love the fact that he's complex and not just mustache twirly, but I still feel like they could have done them better.
Yeah, I agree too. And I also agreed with you what you said about they didn't really, you shouldn't have made him like evil. Like they shouldn't have made him now want to kill everybody. Like I didn't like that either. Like I think they should have kept it that he does want to save people, but he also wants to get to his other universe. And I don't know. I didn't like that either. And I didn't like the sudden turn at the end where it was like one of those cliche things I've seen a million times where the villain has a last minute change of heart because, oh, but it's too late now. It's already in motion. Like, I don't know. I didn't like that. I've seen that a million times. So I thought they dropped the ball a little bit on him. I think that they could have done better with his story. But yeah, still better than previous seasons. But I want to kind of backtrack a little bit to the middle of the season, because this was when Tarka was at its best, and this is when book story was the most interesting. I want to talk about that episode 7, which I still think is one of, if not the best episode of Discovery. Like an episode where everybody is just sitting around talking for the whole episode, or standing around talking, and it was brilliant. So we have this debate on whether to go aggressive against the DMA, which of course Tarka and Book are in favor of, or we want to have diplomacy with species 10C first. And both were presenting very good arguments, and Book had a really after Book made his speech, I was just like, well, that's it. Everybody's going to vote in his favor. That was a really good speech. And I didn't really believe him. Like, I wasn't on his side, but I was like, well, he made some good points there. Tarka, you could even tell then, was a little bit more obsessive than Book was. But I don't know. I thought that was a very interesting debate, and that ties us back into what we were talking about at the beginning with the DMA, and that's what really hooked me even more into the DMA, is this interesting philosophical debate where there's not necessarily a really clear right answer. Even though I kind of was always on Team Burnham a little bit, but it wasn't like black or white. It wasn't like a very clear-cut choice. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that aspect of the storytelling?
Oh no, I love that episode too, and I agree that may be the best episode of Discovery. I love how I actually wasn't like Team Burnham or Team Book. I was like, wow, they both make good points. Like, I could go on either way. I was kind of like those people at the thing. They're like, yeah, let's go for Book. Oh no, let's go for Burnham. Like, and I love that. I love the complexity of how there wasn't a clear right and wrong. That they both made excellent points. They both had pure motivations, and that's the conflict to me. And this is why I think it's like the height of Discovery, because rather than, oh, there's an evil mustache mirror universe villain trying to beat me and he's evil, they have more of a level playing field, and that feels more Star Trek to me too. And I do think that's probably, and also, like, I'm a sucker for episodes where people are standing around talking, and yet it still manages to be riveting and fascinating. To me, that's more impressive than, cinematography and spinning cameras and great special effects or whatever, is to have that just people talking, yet it is riveting. And that's definitely what they pull off there. So I think that's definitely the highlight of the season, not just that episode, but that whole sort of conflict. And they earned, like, really, like, by introducing her and her relationship with Burning early in the season, they earned her part in that, where she was interesting, where she was pushing her in one direction, yet she couldn't speak out. She had Burnham do it for her. Like, and it was a really pure use of Burnham too, because you could buy that into her character, that's what she really believed. And to me, this is why I know that Discovery was definitely trying to be dark and gritty in the first couple seasons, but I fight against people who say it's still like that. Because for me, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like they're trying to push this Star Trek narrative of pieces away and let's talk things out, which has always been the Star Trek way to handle things. Oh, you're on mute.
I think I said this in my review at the time, is that Burnham really reminded me of Janeway, and probably because I just finished my Janeway, my Voyager rewatch. Janeway very consistently was, well, not consistently, because there was a couple of episodes where she was off character, but for the most part, she was very always wanting to stick with the Starfleet way, no matter what. We got to stick to our principles, because if we don't have our principles, what do we have left? And she was very adamant about that. So Burnham then really reminded me of she really embodied that philosophy. And I don't know if I always 100% agreed with Janeway. Sometimes it's like, I don't know, maybe Chakotay is it was always those Chakotay Janeway debates. And that's what this really reminded me of. But I just thought it was really, really well done. Uh, but yeah, I wanted to actually jump into the chat a little bit. Maddie had said earlier, Tarka should have asked Species 10C for help. If they're reasonable, maybe they would have been able to send him into the other universe. Yeah, I don't think he was thinking that way. I don't think he was thinking rationally at all.
Yeah.
It seemed like him and Buck were very much like, oh, these are evil people because they're destroying planets. So I don't think he was thinking that way. But yeah, that wouldn't have been a bad idea. When I read that comment, I had this picture in my head of the how it should have ended in like like a version of that where Tarka goes up to Species 10C. Hey, so make it to the other universe, and they do the little thing that they do, and then he's like, oh, okay, all right, that's it. What else? And Brandon was asking if we ever learned the 10C call themselves. No, and and then Norman mentioned Species 8472. Never knew what they called themselves, although don't get me started on what they did with Species 8472 later on. But I don't think we ever still got what they called themselves.
Apparently, there's like non-canon material that came up with a name for what they call themselves, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
But I actually liked how they never came up with of what 10C calls themselves. I think that's interesting because it sort of promotes that whole language barrier and communication barrier thing, and I don't actually care to know. I actually like how they never explained that.
Yeah, and it seems like they have a very different kind of language than we have. So I don't know. I think it would be weird if they did have a name for themselves that we could understand. So I agree. I feel better off not knowing. Anyways, there's actually something else I wanted to mention. I was going to mention this when we were talking about the DMA, but I forgot to. So I'm going to circle back around to it. I want to talk about the introduction earlier in the season of President Rillick, and how initially I thought she was going to be like the stereotypical TOS asshole Commodore or ambassador who goes on the ship and second guesses everything the captain does, and is a complete asshole and is completely wrong, and that's not what they did with that character. I mean, she was second guessing Burnham, but it turned out to be much more complex than that. And I really enjoyed watching their relationship develop over the course of the season and how they became genuinely friends by challenging each other constantly. Like, really challenged Burnham to be a better person, and she was truthful. So she wasn't that like just asshole Commodore at all. And I found that a very pleasant surprise. It was actually one of my favorite aspects of the season was her and the relationship between her and Burnham. I could have done without the heavy-handed conversation they had in the last episode. Oh, remember that earlier episode when we were talking about the Kobayashi Maru? I was like, okay, yeah, we get it. You're friends now. You know?
Yeah, you don't need to spell it out like that.
but I don't know. I wanted to make sure we threw this in there somewhere because I wanted to talk about this character.
Yeah, I totally agree. I completely agree. I loved the way they used this character. I thought, and a lot of times she wasn't even necessarily in the wrong. Yeah. And not only was she not as bad as the stereotypical asshole admiral, but I would even say she was much, much better character than that admiral. Can't even remember her name. The one they had in seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery.
Cornwell.
Yeah, Cornwell. I did not like her. And they didn't necessarily portray her as the asshole admiral. She wasn't always adversarial, but I just didn't think she was a good admiral or a good leader, where I thought Relic was a really good leader. And I actually think that they had strong qualities, and I loved seeing her and Burnham butt heads, but then ultimately like coming to a place of understanding and friendship. Like, I thought that was great.
Yeah. Absolutely. And getting back into that episode 7, then that's when we really see that they're on the same team. And actually, wasn't there an episode earlier where like really they were like playing politics and really like hint to Michael Burnham. What episode was that?
Which
She like
one?
she like couldn't flat out say what she wanted Burnham to do.
Oh, that was the one where they're having that debate because
Oh, it was the same one? Was it?
yeah, I'm pretty sure because she wanted Burnham. She couldn't say what she wanted Burnham to say, but she knew like that Burnham said she was trying to hint at what she wanted her
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I liked it. So let's move on now. So we were talking about Tarka earlier and book. Well, let's kind of focus on the book aspect. And we had talked about earlier how books grief was very well portrayed. It was very well done. Um, really helped raise the stakes, and it felt like real grief. Like it felt like because it didn't just go away after one episode. You don't. Getting back to a Deep Space Nine episode you referenced earlier, you don't have 25 years worth of where you think you're in prison, the most traumatic experience of your life, and then you're perfectly fine the next episode. Or the one that always gets me is the one when Geordi, the Mind's Eye, when Geordi is brainwashed by the Romulans, and he's traumatized by it, and he says to Counselor Troy, "But I remember." And she says, "Don't worry, Geordi. You and I will help build your memories back together. Except we're never going to mention this ever again.
Except you're going to be perfectly fine in the next episode."
So I loved the way that his grief was handled, but I really do think his grief was really motivating him and driving him. And even though he did make some really good points in that episode 7, he was driven by that, and this leads us to kind of a fork in the road between two lovers, Burnham and Book, which I thought was very interesting. So what did you think of that storyline?
Oh yeah, no, I thought that was amazing. Not only we talked about Tarka as the antagonist, but really Book was kind of the antagonist for a little bit, and I love that. And I love that you can see, as I said, you can see both the points of views, and yet they were. By that stage, after the debate, you kind of think, okay, like Book, he should just accept he lost. He tried, he lost, but no, he has to try to go with Tarka and run off. And obviously, at this point, I was like, yes, he needs to be stopped. But I bought his motivation. I bought that he would do this, and I love that these two people who love each other were in opposite ends. I think that's amazing. I kind of pissed off that they ended up playing cards and watching wrestling or whatever. Like that was dumb to me, but. I do like the whole concept of the story, and I do think it was played well in other aspects, in certain aspects. So I do definitely think that was a real strength. And plus, you could buy like the way the characters behaved and the way the actors portrayed it. You could buy that they still loved each other, and yet they were just motivated to do the opposing thing that the other side didn't want to do, and that they were constantly like bumping heads. Like Burnham was doing everything she could to stop Book, but she was making sure she didn't hurt him or kill him and stuff. And he was the same way with her. Like when he thought someone in Discovery might be killed, he was like, "No, we can't do it." Like, but yet they were so gung ho in getting their thing accomplished. I think that's amazing storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was really good storytelling. And whenever anyone says they, don't like modern Trek and they, I don't know, maybe overemphasize like just how great previous Trek was, even though there was a lot of shit in previous Trek. I would point to storytelling like this to show that modern Trek can be really good and can be very very interesting and is really complex and intriguing storytelling, which Star Trek has not done 100% of the time throughout its entire history. So I would point to this as really good storytelling, and I absolutely loved it. I liked that casino episode more than you did, but in retrospect, I didn't. I'm now saying that they could have been cut because of the 4 episodes immediately after the break, episodes 8 through 11. I was like, well, it's just dragging on for so long. Like, and then after that, I was like, okay, we could have cut out 8. And what I liked about 8 is that I liked how they really did a great job of showing how Burnham and Book still loved each other, even though they were on opposite sides. But they could have just taken elements of that and stuck it into the other episode, the following episode, which should have been episode 8, the one where she goes right after Book. Like they could have kind of combined that. Now that I look at it in retrospect, but that I really liked how they really showed us how much these two characters really loved each other, and yet were on opposing sides.
Yes. Well, I do have to gripe about that casino episode for the moment. Just how there's like the conflict. Oh, Burnham and Book are trying for the same thing, and now here's 2 random people you're gonna have to find all of a sudden that just appear out of nowhere, and they want the same thing. You have to team up to defeat them. Like that seemed really. That was sloppy writing.
Yeah. Brandon says there was a casino episode in season 1 of Picard that was much worse. I think that the worst casino episode just doesn't get enough credit for being the worst casino episode, which is actually was it the Royale? I always want to call it the Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
Well, Hotel Royale or something from season 2, the awful season 2 of Next Generation.
See, I kind of like that episode, so this is where we disagree. I would think these 2 are worse than them.
No, and that was the worst episode.
I wanted to address something in the chat. I think we were talking about Rillick or Cornwell. Maddie Jester in the chat says that she's better than Admiral Pottymouth from season 1 of Picard, who Norman confirms is Admiral Clancy. And Matt, I gotta say, the sheer fucking hubris. Anyway. I liked Admiral Pottymouth, but anyway.
And I know, I don't know. I object to calling her Admiral Pottymouth. It's 21st century. Like, there's cussing in Star Trek. Get over it, people. Like,
all right, yeah. Here's the thing where people complain about cursing in Star Trek actually upsets me more than anything, or I think it's more ridiculous than anything else. Because the only reason they never cursed in Star Trek before is because they were on network television or syndicated television that wouldn't allow it. If they could, they would. Now they can, so they are. Got no issue with that.
And it's true to life. People curse. Even in, Roddenberry's, utopian vision, people are still going to curse. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Mark. I like Admiral Clancy better than Admiral Cornwell. But
Admiral Cornwell just has the sheer fucking hubris. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So.
Oh no! Norman Buckwell brought up "Bada Bing, Bada Bang." That's by far the worst casino episode.
Oh,
ever.
I guess I didn't even think of that as a casino episode.
That is a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that very true. You win. Norman Buckwell wins the prize. That is the absolute worst casino episode of all time in Star Trek. Why are we even ranking casino episodes? There shouldn't be this many casino episodes. Why are they so obsessed with the casino episodes? Like, why do they? All the Trek producers, are they all just gamblers? Well, I don't get it. Why are we so obsessed with casino?
Oh. Norman says that the author of the Royale was referred to in the latest season of Picard. I did not catch that.
Oh, I didn't catch that either.
No.
I still want to say the Royale with cheese. Because I saw that movie so many damn times. It was, I'll have to look that up. I didn't even catch that. Very interesting. Picard is referencing a lot of things this year, but anyways,
except for Times Arrow.
Yeah, except for Times Arrow. I don't want to. I was talking about that in the chat earlier, but I don't want to get into it because we're here to talk about Discovery, not Picard. We'll talk about Picard after the end of that season over on your channel, Plug. Anyways, so. Moving forward now, so there's this really great, drama between Book and Burnham, and they did a great job of showing how much the characters loved each other. Moving forward, and then this is where the season drags. Could have been 4 episodes, could have easily been reduced to 2. But then we do get to that end finally. We get to Species 10C. And I heard people complaining about that episode 11 when they went down to that planet. My only complaint was that after 4 episodes, it just felt like get on with it already. But it's less about that particular episode for me and more about the previous episodes should have been cut. But I thought it was a very interesting episode, but also the people who were complaining, oh, why are they wasting time going out of this planet? Well, if they hadn't, they wouldn't have been able to communicate with 10C. So it was very important that they went down to that planet. And this is when we actually get a scene with a character espousing random childhood backstories. It actually kind of made sense in context.
Yeah, this was the least offensive one of those, though.
Yeah, and right away, I thought that episode did a great job of hooking us into, what is this 10C? This is very interesting. They look like there's big like dinosaur bones or something. They look like they're very large, and they have these things that, produce different emotions. So at that point, I was feeling pretty confident we weren't going to get the bumpy head aliens, which I think both you and I were afraid that they might do something like that. And if it was bumpy head aliens, I think we both agreed that would have really sucked. But I think it was at that point where I started feeling like, oh, okay, I think maybe Species 10C is going to be something a little bit different. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I like that build-up episode. I agree it would have been better had they not, cut back on some of the build before, because that time they are stretching your patience. Like, come on. but I still say you leave that episode as is. You just cut out what was before it. And because I do think that was they're learning, getting background, and I use that background. It helps them communicate it. And there is a lot of people, I think Brandon in the chat mentioned this earlier. It's very similar to that movie Arrival. It reminded me a lot of that. But I think that in a good way, how it all was about communication. And I do like I think the way they did it was smart. It was intelligent. It was like the add the emotion thing with the mathematical symbol for people or whatever to say I'm scared or something like that. That was like, I was super impressed with that. I thought that was really good. I love that 10C is a really unique alien, as it very well should be, because they're from another galaxy. Now, if we go by the canon that we saw in the chase, the whole reason why all the humanoids look like people in the Milky Way is because someone who was the founder or whatever put all of her DNA across the galaxy. So it's just out of galaxies, so it shouldn't be other galaxies. So actually stay in with canon. But it's really, if it's another galaxy and it's like that far away, it should be something really unique. And I love how it is. It's not, we were both so worried it would be a mustache twirly villain that let's send this DMA to kill people. But they don't understand. They didn't recognize their life because it was so different. So they didn't recognize the Federation members or the humanoids and the Alpha Quadrant as intelligent life. For me, it reminded me a lot of the sort of Cisco's interaction with the prophets in the Emissary episode, that they're so different that it's hard to communicate or even comprehend what kind of species they are, and they had this, and it really I know I say this a lot, but it felt so Star Trek to me. This is one of the most Star Trek storylines Discovery's ever done, to have the trying to recognize that different uniqueness and find commonality. So I thought it was amazing. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you that if they're going to have a species in another galaxy, it's got to be way different than anything we've ever met before. And actually, I think back to an episode of the original series where we also meet a species from another galaxy. And why am I I'm brain farting on the name of this episode, even though I put it in my top 10.
By any other name.
Yeah. I knew it was from some saying, and I was like, wait, what was that cliche? Yeah, so by any other name, was another episode. I thought it was brilliant in that episode they didn't have any like budget for any sort, like you can't really show any kind of other aliens other than human looking aliens, which is why like the Klingons look like humans and then Romulans and Vulcans look like humans with pointy ears and like that because that was their budget and that was their the technology at the time. So I thought that was actually smart to say, oh well, this is what these aliens really look like, but actually they have to take human form because we don't have a budget to show you what they really look like. But I thought that was a really good workaround around not having a budget and not having any technology. Whereas here I like expected to see something really unique.
Yeah, they put that huge budget to good use.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I love that the look of them was kind of ambiguous at first. We didn't really know what they looked like. And I like the trippiness of the kind of the surroundings when they finally do like have a face-to-face with them in the final episode. I didn't get like what there was these like things going up and down that looked like strawberry mushroom things. I didn't really know what that was, but I thought it was cool because it's so different and it's
yes.
And absolutely agree with you that this was the most Star Trekian thing that Discovery has ever done. And people who still insist that Discovery is not Star Trek just don't even know what they're talking about because this is like at the very heart and very core of Star Trek. Earlier in the season, as we had talked about, Burnham was very Janeway-esque and sticking to the cores of Starfleet, which is very, very Star Trekian. And here, to seek out new life and civilizations. That's what it's all about. And this is the most unique life and civilization that arguably we've ever seen in Star Trek. And just the way that they had to figure out how to communicate with them was so brilliant. And I loved that it ended up being a combination of a mathematical equation and emotions. And they just slowly kind of built on that. It was so good. Now, I went ahead and suspended disbelief in the finale that all of a sudden, like, Rilke is given 10-minute speeches in there. I was like, wait a minute. I also think... Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I had the exact same reaction as you when Rilke started giving this big long speech. Like, wait a second, like, shouldn't you like some dumb that down a little bit? Like, how the hell are they gonna communicate that? But he just does. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, but I also think it was like important for them to communicate in that way in the end. It was important for Book to be able to. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll suspend disbelief. That's fine. I'll give them a pass on it because it worked really well for the story. And I loved Book's speech at the end. And that they were like, oh well, okay, so we'll just do our DMA stuff elsewhere. And he's like, no, that's not good enough. And I really liked that as well.
Yeah, I did too. I wanted to ask you about that because I heard the opinion that Book is being a bit of a hypocrite because the Starfleet go around using warp drive and destroying subspace or whatever. I guess that's referencing that one episode where saying the warp drive was harmful.
That episode, yeah, it was not canon
about that episode.
No, in the very next episode, they were going.
Well, to be fair, they did mention like 2 times.
Yeah, they did. And then never again.
And then never again. But even like, I think they were saying that even if you disregard that episode, oh, they're using this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, it's not at all the same thing. You can't say he's not being a hypocrite. I actually agreed. I like how he's kind of holding them to task. But it also had to do because they wanted the DMA to drive their like big protective dome, but they were saying you need to let go of your fear, which I do see as some modern commentary on modern day, which I appreciated that you need to let go of your fear and not cause it to do destructive things.
Yep. yeah I totally agree. I just got sidetracked with something I saw in the chat here with Norman Buckwald about he's hoping that in season 5 they further develop Adira after Grey Witch Trill. There wasn't much of I think you meant them, except admiration of Detmer. I don't want them to turn into Merryweather. Totally agree with that. Although I didn't like the Deer and Detmer thing. I thought it was another one of those like random.
I didn't mind. And it was out of nowhere, but I still thought it was nice for Adira's character.
Yeah. But I want to get going soon, and I wanted to wrap up talking about season 5. But did you have any other anything else to add on 10C, or anything you want to try to get in real quick that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, real quick, I want to get on because we talked about the Rillick and Burnham relationship. I do want to talk about the Burnham. We felt it was leading to her having to sacrifice someone, because I think that was another down point of the season, particularly end of the season, that she didn't really. I mean, it wasn't a total failure because she kind of did. She did lose Book for a bit, and she was willing to sacrifice him. So, A for effort for that. So it's not a total failure. But I still feel like, for me, the perfect scenario would have been if Detmer did sacrifice herself like they teased. Because Book is kind of an important character, and he has a great relationship with Burnham. So I understand wanting to keep him around, and I didn't really mind the death fake out. But we don't need Detmer. I mean, she's not. I think she's an important enough character where it would have impact, and it would be a big sacrifice for Burnham, but the show wouldn't lose anything to not have her.
Yeah, I wanted them to sacrifice Book. I don't think Detmer would have been as impactful enough. I think that it needed to be Book for it to be really impactful. Like, I think there was potential for a Star Trek 2 level of emotional scenes.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
With Book, but not necessarily with Detmer. But they could do one like they did it with Ariam, but it wouldn't have the same impact. Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I just, this is why I said in my Picard review that Elnor, he's dead. He's definitely gonna, the time they're gonna fix the timeline, he's gonna be back. Like, let's not even pretending like we're killing off characters. Star Trek doesn't kill off characters. They couldn't even kill off that general from Earth or whatever. Like, really, you can't even kill her off.
You could fucking do exactly when she was still alive. I'm like, really? Like, you can't even kill her off? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I actually missed that they beamed her out. So when they showed her at the end standing there, I was like, wait, is she dead? Like, why is she there? But I
remember they just said a really blink and you miss line of dialogue. Oh, we beamed her safely to sickbay,
Yeah, I missed that. So I was like, oh, why is she? I thought, isn't she dead? Like, why is she there? I don't know. And that would have been it wouldn't have been the impactful sacrifice that we were looking for, but it would have been a really noble sacrifice, and it would have been good. But
it would have been something.
Couldn't even do
that
much.
Now, I actually agree that Book would definitely be like a Star Trek 2 level thing where Detmer never would have. But I understand them wanting to keep that character. I don't understand them wanting to keep Detmer. Like Book would have been more powerful, but you're not willing to commit to that. At least do the Detmer thing. If you're not willing to do the Detmer thing, at least do the fucking general. That's like the least you can do.
Yeah, well, if they'd kill off Detmer, then you get rid of that. There goes that whole storyline with the deer and
and of course about her childhood or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Though, yeah. Overall, though, I did like the ending overall. They did kind of give us a little bit of. I mean, I wanted Burnham to have to, make a sacrifice, and she was willing to make a sacrifice. So they kind of cheated and had her willing to make a sacrifice. So I kind of feel like, in a very, very minimum way, they met what I wanted them to do, but not really good enough. But it also wasn't to the point where I felt like they totally dropped the ball on that whole storyline, and I was really pissed off because at least she was willing to sacrifice somebody.
Yeah, and she did feel like she thought she did for 2 minutes or whatever. So at least that's something.
And I think we both mentioned in our reviews, like, I'm sorry, but I can't get behind people who complain about Samiko Martin Green's acting. I've heard people say she's a terrible actor, but I don't even know what you're talking about. This was a phenomenal scene where she just looks so hopeful and happy. Oh, books beaming away, and then
that was an amazing.
And then
scene.
just being devastated, and then realizing she doesn't have time to be devastated. That she still has a ship to captain, and I thought that was phenomenal.
I get chills even talking about it. It was probably one of the best scenes in the Star Trek period. Like, and I never thought that Samiko Martin Green was a bad actor. I had many Planes of Discoveries, especially the earlier seasons, but that was never one of them. Like, I've always disagreed with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned in my review too, because I've just recently watched Star Trek 3 and just how much of a contrast that was from you nigga bastard. You kill my son. Like,
when I did my Star Trek 3 review, I had someone in the comment section defend that as good acting. You clean bastard. Anyway.
Yes, which Norman and Brandon and Maddie pointed out when I did my live chat a couple weeks ago. I did recreate that scene in the opening of my Star Trek 3 review. Next month I'm going to be doing Star Trek 4. I don't know what I'm going to do for that yet, but anyways, excellent scene. And I thought it ended well. Excuse me. Overall, I still think that 10 minutes of an epilogue was a bit too long. Maybe we didn't need all the little characters saying goodbye or whatever. But I think there was a lot of it that was really good. I think we really did need to wrap up the Burnham and Book thing, in which I think they did a very good job of. I like the Book, had some consequences, but we're really excited, intent is important. So he's basically got community service to give back to, the victims of the DMA. And I thought that was an appropriate thing. And pretty sure in season 5, there's going to be another emergency that they're going to need Book for. And he's just going to stop doing that community service. And then they're not going to mention it again, but that's okay.
Well, what I assume was going to happen is they're going to do a time jump, and they're going to be, oh, thank God you got the community service done.
Yeah, they could also do that.
Yeah.
So, and Manny says, Earth is rejoining the Federation. Yay. They don't mention Mars, though. I guess no one lives there now. It didn't seem like it, because remember in the first episode where they introduced Earth, it was Earth and Titan.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the impression that there were colonies anywhere else. But is that what your impression was, Mark?
Yeah, I think they maybe they all moved to Titan.
Yeah, because those are the only two that they ever mentioned. So I don't. So I assume there aren't people on Mars anymore, but who knows? So I don't know if Titan. Yeah, that's a good point. Does Titan now become part of? Was Titan a part of the Earth thing, or was it its own individual?
They have an alliance, as far as I know.
Yeah, so Titan isn't necessarily in the Federation if Earth joins.
I don't know. No, Mars is not still on fire. It's been centuries.
Yeah, and I thought that was a great scene at the end that Earth finally rejoins the Federation, and I don't know if Joe Biden had walked off of that shuttle, I wouldn't have been any less surprised. I was like, Stacey Abrams, oh my god! But I thought it was perfect. I loved it, and I love that Earth has finally joined the Federation, and they got her to do that. That was great.
Yeah, no, absolutely amazing. And I will say, I didn't actually mind the epilogue that much. I didn't even notice it was that long. I guess they had one scene in the bar, which I thought was unnecessary, but most of the other stuff, I really.
Yeah, a little bit was needed for sure. Like, you definitely needed to have an epilogue. I think there was some things they got to cut, but yeah. Oh, and real quick, I do want to mention. What are your thoughts on Saru and the president of
Oh,
Navarre,
yeah.
because they, I guess they said in one of the ready rooms or something that I saw where that was just a relationship that developed organically from like season one. They just saw some chemistry between those characters, or not season one, the season before that, season three. um, um, that they noticed some chemistry between those actors and they wanted to roll with it. And Doug Jones had mentioned that like one of the things he really was hoping for Saru eventually to have some kind of romantic connection, and I can tell that it was developed organically. Again, I've mentioned this several times, but of course, we have the Chakotay and 7 to 9 thing, which I don't even need to get into. But I also think that the B'Elanna and Tom Parrish thing was never developed organically. It was just something that the writers forced together, and I don't think they ever had chemistry.
Never.
And I think Star Trek, especially in that era of the 90s, did too many forced romances where the characters don't have any chemistry. But this one, the writers say it was developed organically, and I believe them because I feel that. I think it wasn't natural. I don't know. What was your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was it was felt natural and it was cute. It was nice. I wasn't like huge into it, but I wasn't opposed to it either. Sometimes when they had scenes with this, like let's get back to the main stuff, but it was still good. And I overall thought it was a humble, nice little romance, and I totally bought it. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, Brandon says you folk in the States know who Stacey Abrams is. I never heard the name before. Well, that's why I explained who she was in my review, mostly for you, Brandon, because I didn't think you had heard of her. But I said for all my international subscribers, this is who Stacey Abrams is, because I figured there would be people out there who hadn't heard of her.
Maddie and Brandon in the chat are both correct that B'Elanna should have ended up with Harry Kim, not Tom Paris. Like, they had natural chemistry, but the writers didn't give a fuck about natural chemistry. Two characters together.
Yeah, and then they couldn't do the old gag with Harry Kim always failing with the ladies and having bad luck with the ladies.
Just like he never freaking gets promoted. But
yeah, no, absolutely. This is what happens when you follow the chemistry that is just naturally occurring between the characters, rather than forcing something that there is no chemistry. Okay. Was there anything else I wanted to, before we start talking a little bit about looking ahead to season 5?
Now we can go ahead and do that.
So I've talked a little bit about some of the things that I would like to see. I would like to see it be fewer episodes, which according to Maddie Jester, it will be. I would like to see it be more concise, more streamlined. I would like to see them maybe try to do a serialized story without a mystery box and see how that works for them. And character-wise, I would like to see more Adira, as someone mentioned in the chat earlier. I am very curious what they're going to do with Saru. How long can they do this Star Trek 5 thing when you have 2 captains? Like, like they kind of went under the radar all season. Where Saru was actually a captain, but he was acting as first officer. How long are they going to keep doing that? Is he just going to go off with the president of Navarre and have kids or something? I don't know. Like, I don't know what are they gonna do with Saru? I would love to see definitely President Rillick come back. I would love to see a more Admiral Vance as a character who's really grown on me. But as far as a story for season 5, I have no idea. I know that they're already writing it. They already know what they're doing for season 5. But I don't have any idea. I just hope that it's good, and I hope that I would like to see them not do a mystery box, whatever the story happens to be. I can't even fathom what it could possibly be, to be perfectly honest with you. So do you have any thoughts about what you'd like to see in season 5, or what you think we might see?
Yeah, as I said, I agree that Discovery. I guess I was a little disappointed at first because I was expecting Discovery to have their season 3, their Next Generation season 3, or their Deep Space Nine season 3, or the Enterprise season 3, and I don't think they've had it yet. Like, it's gotten better, I will agree, but I haven't found that. Oh, this is an amazing season that totally saved the show. And that's what I hope. and I think what you're saying before, they need to fix their pacing issues. They need to, and not have not focus on the mystery of a week. Let's not do. You can have serialized storytelling without having a mystery box or whatever. And just the main thing is more concise storytelling. The fact that it's a shorter season does make me really confident for that. But then again, I hope it's not a story that could have been told in 5 episodes that they're doing. They need to pace it better and not throw in random bullshit like casinos or Quatlumat or whatever crap. And for my bid, I know you disagree, but they need to cut back on the over sentimentality. I mean, that's not to say you can have people be touchy-feely or show their emotions, but you don't have to dwell on unearned, especially with the side characters, unearned. Like, I'm sorry, but I felt that was way with What's-Her-Face Non, where they hugged. They're like, oh, we go way back. I'm like, do you really? It seems like you barely knew each other. So I just think they need to scale that back a bit. And just mainly the pacing is the biggest thing, though. And like the Star Trek feel, the having the great allegory of Star Trek story of them, it's just true to Star Trek, that they fixed that, or they perfected that this season. Keep that, but fix the pacing.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree. There was something in the chat that I saw.
One other thing. Stop spinning the goddamn camera. You don't need to do that. Stationary camera thing is still cinematic. It still looks awesome. You don't need to constantly have the characters walk by and spin.
That doesn't bother me the way it bothers you. I didn't even notice it until you pointed it out. I was like, oh yeah, I guess they do that, but I just don't. It's just something that's just not on my radar. but fair enough. What was I going to say? Matty Jester said Admiral Vance with 2 hip flasks at work. What a legend! Like, where did those come from? He just had it like in his uniform. That flask, like. Yeah, he's a legend.
Probably carries it around with him.
Norm Buckwall, there is no great season yet of Discovery. This one dragged more towards storylines of season 2 and 3, in spite of obvious blemishes. I said that earlier too. There's not been a great season of Discovery yet.
I don't know if it dragged. Sorry, I don't know if it dragged more than season 3. I thought season 3 with the whole burn.
Oh, in a way, I look for more towards. Oh, yeah, I didn't drag more than season 3 for sure. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, and sorry, Brandon in the chat says in the walking in slow motion. Like, it was over the top, the heroes walking to the shuttle.
Yeah. No, I laughed when you said in your review that with that one scene that you were hearing the Reservoir Dogs song.
Yes,
I thought it was the same thing. That do 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 do. Yeah. All right. On that note, we do need to wrap things up. I need to get out of here. So, Marc, why don't you tell the good people where they can find you and what you are doing?
So, my name is Marc. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. I am covering Star Trek Picard at the moment, as well as, other older Star Trek thing, and doing the original series. I'm about to watch the greatest season of Star Trek ever, season 3 of the original series.
I don't envy you.
So that review is going to be coming out soon. I finished wrapping up my Clone Wars, where I'm doing a top 10 least favorite episodes, and then I'm going to start Rebels, and lots of other craziness on my channel. So that's what I'm up to on Enchantment of Eternity.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, I do have to address what Norman said. We forgot to give a rating. I think. Do you want to give a
Oh,
rating for the season
right.
real quick?
Okay. An 8? Yeah, an 8.
You hadn't thought of it ahead of time? No.
No, I have not actually. I have
Yeah.
not thought of it at the time. I don't think this is quite a 9 because I had too many pacing issues, and I'm probably going to lower the ratings of my previous seasons. This is definitely the highest, but yeah, I think it gets an 8.
Yeah, I probably go 8.2. Since I do give 0.5s, I was thinking of an 8.5, but I think I'll just give it a solid 8 as well. All right. For those of you finding me for the first time, my name is Alyssa, and I cover Star Trek Picard weekly as well on my channel here, Alyssa Jean's Reviews. I also have monthly videos, which I do. I do a Nostalgia Lane series where I rewatch an old movie from years gone by that I haven't seen in a while and review it. And I'm also currently doing one Star Trek film per month, and Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home is coming up in April. And all kinds of other stuff on my channel. So please subscribe and check out all of that. And big thank you to Brandon, Maddie, and Norman. Sorry, my biggest fans always join me in the chat. It's so great to have you guys. I think I haven't 100% decided, but I think I'm probably going to do another one of my solo live chats with Wine next Saturday on April 2nd. Not 100% confirmed, but I think I am, and it'll be great to see the three of you in there once again. All right, everybody, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.